staff to Colin Powell. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, great to see you always, Colonel. Thank you for joining us. And I first must say to you, I have a special affection for you because for the last few years, you're the only person I could get interested in my theory that Trump was not going to leave if he did not win the election. So before we get into the details of that, which I know is your area of expertise, it's a given that on election day, no matter what happens, he will declare victory, right?
I think so.
Okay. So you had a group called the Transition Integrity Project. Now that Trump has tweeted, maybe we should delay the election, I assume that things are more urgent than ever over there. What is the plan? What does the Transition Integrity Project do?
Let me say that I'm also a member of the National Task Force on Election Crises. So, two groups. The larger group, the task force, looks and has been looking since June of 2019 at the entire process. In other words, everything that's happened and everything that will happen before 3 November. The TIP looks, the Transition Integrity Project, looks at, as its name suggests, the transition to some 70 days or so between when the election is determined. And it's very important to understand it will not be determined probably on 3 November. It might be 7, 8, 9 November before it's determined because of all of the new voting methodologies and votes coming in well after the election and the usual poll closings occur. So the TIP is looking at that time period all the way up to 14 December when the Electoral College must meet, all the way to 20 January at noon when the incumbent has to leave the Oval Office. So it's two different perspectives. It's TIP that's been doing the war games, and I think that's the one you're probably interested in.
War games, meaning that you are gaming out scenarios that happen after November 3rd and what he might do and what the Democrats might do in response. Can you tell us?
Exactly.
Can you tell us?
We've had some really high-powered political analysts, scholars, and others playing the Republicans, and I might add, many of them are Republicans. Think Lincoln Project, for example. And we've had Democrats playing the Dems, and we've had different scenarios. One, that you might suspect, is a complete Biden blowout. That is to say, Electoral College and popular vote, Biden wins. Then what does the Trump team do? Another one, as you might surmise also, and very difficult and complex, is where there is really a lot of closeness, a lot of indecision, maybe a popular vote one way and Electoral College vote another way, or possibly even no way to determine, and it's thrust into the House of Representatives. So different scenarios, different reactions from each team. Interestingly, when the Republican team got the scenario decisive Biden win and threw its moves out there, the Democratic team was stunned by the arrogance, the sheer power, and the sheer indecency, if you will, of the Trump team moves. Everything from, okay, we got 70 days to destroy the United States government. We got 70 days in which to not provide the incoming team with any transition whatsoever. You want to know what our policy is on Iran, on China, on taxes? You won't know it because we've destroyed all the paperwork and we won't let anyone brief you. You are coming into an empty White House. There'll be no National Security Council staff, nothing to brief you. You might have a note in your desk drawer in the West Wing that says, "Welcome, you stupid idiot." These moves really put the Democratic team on its feet. Coming back with moves that were mostly legalistic, mostly not powerful, mostly not dramatic. And so I think an insight from that game was, hey, you Democrats, you can't be so timid. The Republicans may be quite ruthless. They may be quite strategic. They may be quite arrogant with their power. Another insight here. If you own the government, you have a considerable advantage over those who don't.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's a more benign reading of it than I would have thought, because at least in that reading, they're leaving. Maybe they're being assholes when they leave and say, well, we're not going to give you the briefing books, but who gives a shit? fine. Who wants your briefing book? You were a bunch of ninnies anyway running the government for 4 years. I don't give a shit what you were doing with China. We're starting anew. I'm worried that he just doesn't leave. So I've asked you what the Republicans are going to do, what the Democrats are going to do. The key question, what does the military do? You're a military man. I know people say it can't happen here. Okay, everything anyone said can't happen here has happened here. It could happen here. Now, I know that there's a breakdown between the top leadership. I think they're much more anti-Trump. But I've heard you talk about people in the ranks who are like literally neo-Nazis.
That's the real issue, I think. If you're familiar with General Milley's promenade, I'm sure you are, with Trump and Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, to St. John's Episcopal Church in Washington Lafayette Square, you know that Secretary Esper was less than happy about that. And you know that Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, actually made a speech for the National War College. And I recommend that to every American citizen. The speech essentially said, I shouldn't have gone. And it explained to all the military officers listening what his view of the Constitution was and so forth, which was quite good. I also happen to know that about 300 flag officers, that's generals and admirals, weighed in, active duty and retired afterwards, to let Mark Milley know that he'd done the right thing. So at that level, the command level, we're probably in pretty good shape. But as you suggested, there are a lot of people in the ranks, particularly the staff sergeant and below ranks, that I'm not so sure about. Many of them voted for Trump. I understand from people I've talked with that that's falling away, that support is falling away a bit because they're not happy with what he's doing and has done with regard to the COVID-19 epidemic. But still, that's a question. I do think, as a military professional, the military will, quote, stay in barracks, unquote. That is to say, it will not come out and follow any untoward orders to do anything against the American people. At the same time, I wonder what will happen, and here we go back to the scenarios in the tabletop exercises, if Trump calls his base to the streets with their guns. His base owns something like 60 to 70% of the 300, 400 million guns in America. If they answer that call and come to the streets with guns, then we probably are going to have a need for the military. And then all bets are off as to how much blood might flow.
Okay, but just to be clear, obviously no one thinks any sort of large percentage of people in our military are neo-Nazis or far-right supremacists. But there is a faction, you think, that could be trouble?
There are some, and I'll give an example. We just got an email from one who said, after I made a remark that times are different today, that we have Muslims in rifle squads, we have Jews in rifle squads, we have Christians, of course, we have different varieties of Christians, we have Wiccans, we have Jedi Knights in rifle squads. You have them all across the panoply of religious and non-religious police in the military today. I got an email from a Marine who said, yeah, you're right, Colonel. I am friends with that Muslim soldier in my squad until we get to combat, and then I'm going to shoot him in the back.
Well, on that note, I think I'll just go out there and drink myself silly for the rest of the afternoon. It's these are trying times. I'm glad we have a steady hand like you watching it for us. I sure hope it comes out better than the worst scenarios might suggest. And what can I say? Let's have faith in America and hope for the best. Thank you, Colonel.
Let me throw something else out at you that another group I belong to, the Civil Linings Group out of New York, is doing.
Yeah,
they're working with people like Mark Cuban and LeBron James and so forth to create, they're working with the Baseball League, the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, to create these voting centers like Louisville had recently. They'll turn their arenas over, and 300 or 400 voting stations will be set up in them. This is a marvelous development in terms of the COVID-19 epidemic because you can stay safe and you can stay healthy in these centers. So this is an initiative that's happening too. I think the American people are coming together in a way that's really positive to make sure this is a free and fair election.
Yeah, I got my fingers crossed, and yeah, I think we'll be here next year. Thank you. Appreciate it, Colonel.